Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Baisley, Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Cutter, Danielson,
Excused.
Exum, Fields, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Hinrichsen, Jaquez Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Liston, Lundeen, Marchman, Moreno, Mullica, Pelton B, Pelton R, Priola, Rich, Roberts, Rodriguez, Simpson, Smallwood, Smallwood, Sullivan, Van Winkle, Will, Winter, Zenzinger. Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Pelton, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. The other Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Journal of Friday, January 20th, 2023 be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? No. Oh. Maybe you should, it didn't sound like you got the votes for that one.
Typical.
The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senate Services.
January 23rd, 2023, correctly printed Senate Bill 61, 62, 63, 64, Senate Resolution 4, correctly engrossed Senate Resolution 4, correctly enrolled Senate Joint Resolution 2, Senate Resolution 4.
Consideration of memorials. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Joint Memorial 1?
Senate Joint Memorial 1, Senator Rodriguez, Representative Froelich, memorializing former Representative and Senator Dottie Wong.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 001 and request that it be read at length.
Will the clerk please read Senate Joint Memorial 1 at length?
Senate Joint Memorial 1, Senators Rodriguez and Representative Froelich, memorializing former Representative and Senator Dottie Wong. Whereas Dorothy Dottie Stone Cipher Wong departed this life on October 20th, 2019, and whereas Dottie was born in Centralia, Illinois on January 5th, 1925, and whereas Dottie received a bachelor's degree from McMurray College, a master's degree from the University of Illinois, and an honorary doctorate from McMurray College as a distinguished alumna, and whereas Dottie married her high school sweetheart, Robert Wong, on January 26, 1947, and whereas Bob and Dottie moved from Illinois to Montrose, Colorado in 1950, and then moved to Denver in 1953, and whereas Dottie served as the regional director for Colorado and Wyoming for the federal domestic volunteer agency known as Action for 10 years, and whereas Dottie served in the Colorado House of Representatives from 1983 to 1986, and in the Colorado Senate from 1986 to 2000, and whereas Dottie served as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee for 12 years, and whereas Dottie was the first person to chair the Senate Judiciary Committee who is not an attorney, and whereas during her legislative career, Dottie served as the prime sponsor for 321 House and Senate bills, of which 243 were enacted into law, and whereas one of the accomplishments of which Senator Wong was very proud was her work to establish a trauma system throughout the state to ensure that persons injured by trauma were taken to the most appropriate facility as quickly as possible. And whereas the establishment of the trauma system took 9 years of work with other legislators, rural and urban hospitals, patient representatives, fire departments, and professional associations of physicians, nurses, and emergency medical technicians. And whereas that system is still in place and operating smoothly today, and whereas other bills of note carried by Dottie Wong include bills to establish confidential testing for the HIV virus, establishment of a system to test all newborn infants in the state for hearing loss, standards and procedures for advance directives for end-of-life care, and several omnibus criminal justice bills. And whereas Dottie Wong was recognized by the Honorable Scott McGinnis on the floor of the United States House of Representatives on May 23, 2000, as the, quote, citizen legislator ideal, unquote, and as, quote, a model that every official in elected office should seek to emulate, unquote, and by the Honorable Diana DeGette on November 15, 2019, as a, quote, true public servant in every sense of the word, unquote, who had a, quote, deep and unwavering commitment to work across the political aisle to get things done for her community, unquote. And whereas Dottie Wong will be remembered for her humor, compassion, practicality, and her integrity, in addition to being a good friend and a good citizen. And whereas it is fitting that we, the members of the General Assembly, pay tribute to the dedicated service of Representative and Senator Dorothy Stonecipher Wong and express our deep regret and sorrow occasioned by her death. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 74th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Dorothy Stonecipher Wong, the people of the state of Colorado have lost a dedicated public servant and outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the General Assembly, do hereby extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of her family and pay tribute to a woman who served the state well and faithfully. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Representative and Senator Wong's children, Nancy Mitchell of Franktown, Dr. Jean Ryan of Austin, Texas, Robert Wong of Bothell, Washington, and her grandchildren.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to offer this memorial for Senator Wong. Although I did not know her personally, I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people, whether who served with her and people who work out in the lobby. She was considered the grande dame of the General Assembly. She was a very powerful person in the Assembly, and a lot couldn't be done without her. She and her husband moved to Montrose, Colorado in 1950 after attending school in Illinois. In 1953, they moved to Denver, and Dottie began her public service on the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. As a Republican, she was first elected to the Colorado House in 1984, and in 87, she was appointed to fill a vacancy in the Senate, where she served until 2000. She was the chairperson of the Senate Judiciary Committee from 89 until her retirement from the Senate. She was involved in many policies in health policy, including treatment for AIDS, early childhood education, and mental health issues. She was recognized as Legislator of the Year by the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association and the Public Service Lifetime Achievement Award by the Colorado Nonprofit Association. Senator Wong passed away in October 2019. While we were dealing with COVID, we could not do this earlier, and honored to have this first memorial set up in her honor today. She was a champion for reproductive health. On her death, she asked for donations to go to Planned Parenthood. And on that, Senator, I renew my motion. Oops, where did I lose my space? Oh, that's it. Oh, quickly. I'd like to recognize the family and the legislators are here. So when I call your name, the family members that are here, if you'd please stand so we could recognize you. I have daughters Nancy and husband Ron Mitchell and their daughter Mary and husband Jim. Thank you for being here. Son Rob Wong and wife Jamie and their daughter Jessie. Thank you. Daughter Jenna, husband Brett Ryan. And their children, Ben and wife Bridget, and children Everett and Freddie. And Lauren, I think I have. Sorry. It entered. And then Charlie Hebler for all the work to organize this memorial. And the senators that are attending with us is Senator Blickensderfer, Ed Perlmutter, Mike Feely, Paul Weissman, Bill Schroeder, Mo Keller, and Representative Jeff Shoemaker. So thank you all for being here.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually knew the good senator from Denver, Senator Wong, testified in front of her and spoke with her on numerous occasions. She was tough. She knew her stuff. Sometimes she could be a little bit on the mean side, depending on which county you were from. And, but man, she was excellent to work with. You knew that when you went and spoke with her, she was going to tell it to you straight up, and she knew exactly what she was talking about. Well studied. I worked with her on a lot of the human services issues. Her and Senator Hopper, Sally Hopper, who was from Jefferson County, they both controlled that Human Services Committee, and they just would whip things through and knew what they were doing, so much so that they did not let the senator from Otero County, Senator Rizzuto, or the senator from Weld County, Senator Owen, who both were on the Joint Budget Committee, did not get to tell Senator Wong what to do. She told them what to do. So she was great, and she's a person that I would like to emulate and follow because she did so well. Thank you.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please be seated, everybody. Sorry.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend Senate Rule 31A for the purpose of allowing former members of the House or Senate to address the body concerning this memorial.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Members, we will now stand in recess to allow our former senators and representatives to address the body. The Senate will stand in recess. Members, if you wish to say a few words about Senator Wong, please make your way down to the well. Senator Keller.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the body and family members. It's a pleasure for me to be here to speak on my experiences with Senator Dottie Wong. Dottie was in the Senate in the 1990s when I was in the House of Representatives, and we carried quite a few bills together, especially on child welfare issues. Dottie was very interested and a champion in that area. One day, I saw Dottie at a memorial service for former Senator Claire Traylor. And if any of you remember Senator Traylor, she was a statesman, just like Dottie was a statesman. And she was in the parking lot, and she was crying her heart out. And, you know, what do you say to somebody when they're crying like that? But I went up to her and I said, gee, Dottie, I'm so sorry. And she looked at me and she said, it's all gone. It's all gone. And I realized that she was crying for the loss of her good friend and fellow statesman, Claire Traylor. But she was also crying for the loss of that particular group, that class of senators. And I refer to that particular group as the golden age of the Colorado State Senate. And I'm not the only one to think this way. Others have mentioned it as well. You had real statesmen like Dottie Wong, Claire Traylor, Mike Feely, Ed Perlmutter, Dave Wattenberg. And Dave Wattenberg, if you remember him, Sally Hopper, Bill Schroeder was part of that class, and there were others that were part of that class as well, who really believed in public service for its sake, and that they worked together bipartisanly on issues that were of benefit, as they saw it, for the citizens of the state of Colorado. Norma Anderson, who was a former senator and former House member as well, said once on the floor of the House, I think it was, if you're doing the right thing for the citizens of the state, you're doing the right thing for your party. So stop the squabbles and let's do the right thing. And that was the opinion, and that was the philosophy by which Dottie and all of her fellow statesmen worked in this deliberative body. They were thoughtful, and they worked across party lines all the time. And if Dottie came to me and said, I've got an amendment for your bill, I almost always took it, partly because I probably had to, but the other was that it was well-reasoned. It was going to make that bill better, that her reasoning and her thoughts about that amendment were well thought through and well done. So I just think so highly of Dottie. I think of her upon occasion, even now, and hope that all of us can emulate the high standard for public service that she showed. Thank you.
Senator Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I couldn't help but notice that Mo Keller didn't mention my name as part of the golden age of the Senate, but that's okay because they didn't pull down my composites either. So if you want to see me with more hair and skinnier, you got to go to the committee room. When I was elected in 1992 and joined the Senate in 1993, I was part of a group of 5 or so that were never supposed to be here. And it's because of Dottie Wong, who sat where Senator Smallwood is sitting now, I was sitting way in the back, that even though I wasn't supposed to be here, I felt welcome. She was very much, to me, a grandmother figure, although the same age as my parents, I guess, now that I look at it. But I was just a kid when I came down here. She was always free at giving advice and encouragement to me and others. I had a propensity, for example, not to wear a coat all the time in the chambers, and she one time told me something that I should have listened to then, but didn't listen to until I returned to the house. She said something akin to, don't repel them with style when you can bring them in with substance. She really sort of could narrow things down. And, Senator Kirkmeyer said, she was tough, and she knew her stuff, but she also had that twinkle. There was also this kindness in her eye that you caught all the time. I thought I was the only one until I read an article upon her death a couple years ago. I had a bill one time that would have gotten rid of all the mandatory minimums in the state. And she was chair of Judiciary Committee and obviously was against my bill. But I went in there, I presented, I had my folks present, I got hammered by the district attorneys, and at the end of the hearing, before any vote, Senator Wong looks at me and she says, Senator Weissman, would you like me to pull this off the table so that you can work on it a little bit? She didn't have to. She didn't have to, but she learned, she used it as a learning experience for a young member. It's really what you need to do to try to get things done. It didn't matter that I was a Democrat and she was a Republican. It didn't matter that we disagreed on the issue. She thought it was best for the place, that we all knew how to get things done and how to work together. Senator Keller said it best. I mean, I don't know if it was the golden age or not, but it certainly was a different age. It was a different age when we trusted each other and worked together, and every time I feel like the old guy coming back urging folks to do the same, because there's so much great work that could be done for the state. Senator Wong certainly showed that. A Republican from Denver, who wasn't afraid to really speak and vote her beliefs, even if they were at odds with her own party, even if they were at odds with her own constituents. She was solid, and she's missed.
Senator Perlmutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I served with Dottie Wong on the Judiciary Committee for 6 years. And her husband, Bob, was an attorney, an outstanding attorney. But had she been in that law firm, she would have been the senior partner. No question about it. Dottie Wong was the best legislator I've ever worked with, period, federal or state. As you've heard, she was smart. She was direct. Senator Kirkmeyer said that. She was direct. She was cunning when she had to be. She was funny. She was always prepared, and she was tough. She ran around with a crowd. They were mostly in that back row where you gentlemen are. Bill Schroeder and Dave Wattenberg and Al Mickeljohn, Sally Hopper, Donna Mint. They were excellent legislators and troublemakers, generally, okay? She tried to keep these guys in line, but didn't accomplish it very often. And from time to time, she'd let Senator Feely and me and Stan Matsunaka and Paul Weissman, although she always was worried about Paul, kind of get involved. She wrote almost single-handedly the Children's Code. We had an interim committee where we met all summer, and we would go late into the evening looking at every single word in the Children's Code, because that's how much she cared about the law and how much she cared about children. She was instrumental in implementing the Victims' Rights initiative that was passed by the people of this state. And again, she was great. One time, she was the head of the Capital Development Committee for years. And so I had the good fortune or misfortune to have to take a tour of all of our corrections facilities throughout the state. And we have a lot of corrections facilities. And after about 3 days of driving around in a couple corrections vans, I said, "Can we stop?" And she said, "No, we've still got a bunch more to do." So she was hardworking and indefatigable. Lastly, on our committee, Judiciary Committee, we had probably the most liberal Democrat I'd ever worked with, a guy named Bill Tebow, an attorney from Pueblo, and probably one of the most conservative Republicans, an attorney, Dick Mutzabaugh from Douglas County. Is Dick here? Oh, that's good. That's good. Now I can really say what I want to say about Mutzabaugh. No, but she managed over those years to keep that committee moving forward despite their opinions, despite their tenacity, and both of them were very tenacious in their positions, but we got work done. She was outstanding, and there's nobody I would rather have emulated as a legislator than Dottie Wong. I'm going to read something from Dorothy Gottlieb, who is in the State House, and she sent this as her statement. "In its beginning, my relationship with Dottie Wong was complicated." And Dorothy Gottlieb, I had to read this first before I was prepared to read this out loud to all of you, because she could get a little spicy in some of the things she would say. "House Districts 9 and 10 were always in competition. According to the ruling dynasty families in House District 9, and you know who you are, nothing good ever came out of House District 10. And after Representative Betty Neal, nothing good would ever come out of that district. I ran for House District 10 in 1996, and despite major attempts to derail me, including rampant rumors that I was an awful person, HD 10 voters thought better, and there I was, elected to the Colorado House, and a real 10 I was. Fast forward to my second term, a controversial bill on reproductive rights was brought to the floor. Being a real Republican, I wanted and still want the government out of my bedroom, my doctor's office, and my wallet as much as possible, so that is how I voted. Next thing I knew, Senator Wong, if you can believe it, came running over from the Senate, tapped me on my shoulder, gave me a big hug, and said, "You are what you said you were." That changed everything. We became buds, worked on and co-sponsored such bills as HB 99-1353, concerning programs for persons convicted of a crime in another state. Senator Wong, you led a wonderful and productive life. Few could match you. I am glad you were my friend, and you are missed. Dorothy Gottlieb.
Senator Schroeder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ed, that surprises me. I was the caucus chair for 12 years, and when I first came in, we had 25 Republican senators. That ought to tell you what the number is on the other side. And, but anyway, Dottie came in, and as part of the caucus, we'd all get together. It was before we had that legislation which says you couldn't get your caucus binded. We never bound our caucus. We always got 18 votes. And then we don't care what the rest of you did, but 18 votes. So every now and then, Dottie and Claire Traylor, who I admired greatly, both of them, would be a challenge in the caucus meetings of some of the issues that came aboard when you're trying to do the long bill, which I think you've all experienced. And so Dottie was tough, but she was fair. And the stuff that she cared about, I think you've heard about already, was families, children, and health. You've heard about Scott McInnes. Dottie was also chosen by the Women of Distinction. I think it's called the Denver Women of Distinction in 2001 as one of the greater women in the legislature and in the Denver area. Dottie was, like I said, just superb. I loved her very much. She was a great person. She even worked for, somebody might know Ike Eisenhower. She worked for Ike and his campaign for president. And then there's one last thing I'd like to throw out. Oh, by the way, Senator Anderson, who some of you might not know, she was the majority leader in the House and the majority leader in the Senate for a while. But anyway, Charlie Hebler, who I read a quote from her and about Dottie, and she was the ultimately practitioner, a fierce defender of women's rights to health care, and could put together very complex public policy, and she worked with everyone, and that's true. No matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, she worked with everyone. I consider Dottie one of the finer women. I've met and served with a lot of great women, but Dottie, Senator Claire Traylor, and that lady right up there, Ruth Stockton. Both Claire and Ruth are from Jefferson County. That's where I was elected, from Jefferson County. But of all the women I've met, Dottie fits into that category. She is terrific, and she did a great job for the state.
Senator Feely.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you putting these pictures up here. I hope you all get a chance to stop by. There's some very good-looking senators in our past. Please stop by. I don't want to take too long, and I appreciate the comments that have been made. You know, Dottie was, notwithstanding her integrity or collegiality and her hard work, one of the things, she had a tremendous sense of humor. I mean, she was a funny woman. So I'll tell one story. I wasn't planning on telling this, but we found ourselves together, sitting together on the Senate Finance Committee one day. We were up in that office in the corner, or that room in the corner, and we didn't usually sit there. I don't know how we ended up, but I'm sitting in the back in the corner with Dottie, and the apiary folks came in to seek ag classification for their beekeeping operations. And so I'm just hearing this, and Dottie turns to me and she says, "Oh, this is not a good idea, is it?" I said, I don't know, you know, I don't know what's going on. She said, "This isn't agriculture. How do you herd bees?" And I said, "I don't know." So she probably gave me a demonstration of how a border collie would herd bees and started going, "Yip, yip, yip." We were like the second grade children in the back of a classroom who couldn't be controlled anymore. And the whole, it stopped. And the only thing I can tell you is that the apiaries still do not have egg classification today. So I just wanted to join some of my colleagues to remember Dottie. She was an absolutely terrific woman. And I know the family, I know you appreciated her sense of humor, and it's just such an honor to have been able to serve with her. Thank you very much.
Senator Blickensderfer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know now from here on out, whenever I hear somebody say herding cats, I'll just substitute herding bees. Thank you, Senator Feely. Dottie was one of the two people you didn't want to see strolling down this aisle when you were arguing your case, especially if you knew you were in a controversial and certainly perhaps a losing position. But she'd, by the way, the other person who you didn't want to see stroll down the aisle was Senator Tebow, who was mentioned earlier. Two of the most logical legislators in the whole place. But Dottie would often come walking down the aisle, and she'd come up to this microphone after I'd spelled out my case, and she'd just give a long sigh. Senator Blickensderfer. And you knew from there on you just better strap in and do your very best, because it was going to be a long, difficult road of facing down her logic. I was her vice chair on Judiciary, and she turned to me. I think it was more for show than anything else, because I never really was much of a lawyer, but we'd talk legal stuff and make our way through it. She had the ability to give credit where credit is due. I carried a piece of legislation that was sort of the centerpiece of everything I'd done around here that had to do with school finance. And it was pretty controversial over here, and when it went back to the House, it was a House bill. The House immediately killed it, and Speaker George, in his wisdom, was able to amend it onto one of his own bills, which he shared with Dottie. So this great piece of work was under two names that didn't have my name on it other than a co-sponsor. But all that aside, when that was amended and sent back over here, Dottie just came to the microphone and handed me the bill and said, "You take it." And she did indeed know to give where credit where it was due. The other great quality that she showed was that she could help her colleagues, and I think most of us experience this, help colleagues save face. Because as you know, down here at the microphone, it's pretty easy to get sideways on what you're trying to do, and somehow she would come through and on her white steed and save the day, and thank goodness, because sometimes we got into things way over our heads. God bless you, Dottie.
Representative Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Charlie Hebler, thank you. Thank you for this day. Okay? Thanks for not forgetting my phone number. Thank you. My name is Jeff Shoemaker. It's an honor to stand in this chamber as a former member of the House, and I think I have a pretty distinct honor, because other than you, Nancy, and other than you, Jeannie, I think I have known Dottie Wong longer than anybody else on the face of this planet. And I tell you that because my father, former Senator Joe Shoemaker, who, Senator Coleman, you're sitting in my dad's seat from all these years ago. And my father, Joe, and later Senator Bob Wong were on the cabinet of Mayor Dick Batterton in the late 50s and early 60s. And that friendship led to a 30-plus year law partnership. And so I have known Dottie Wong since I was 4 years old. She was a friend. She was a second mom. She was, and I'll get to that in a minute, a mentor. But there was Senator Joe Shoemaker, Mr. Joint Budget Committee, who served on the JBC with Ruth Stockton. And when my father left the Senate, his successor was Senator Robert Wong. And then in 1984, I had just moved back to Denver from Colorado Springs, and Senator Joe Shoemaker and Senator Bob Wong sat with future State Representative Dottie Wong And I had been in the district all of, 4 or 5 weeks when my father said, congratulations, you're in precinct 1111. You are now the precinct chair, and you are going to help me get Dottie elected. And that's how the game worked. And then when Dottie, through a vacancy, moved from the House to the Senate, I had the honor of being elected to replace her in the State House. So that's how far back we go. Dottie loved this chamber. Dottie loved this Capitol. Dottie loved the art of politics, but also the statesmanship of politics. And she exemplified both. She was whip smart. She was whip sage, whip kind, and whip tough. And you've heard that word tough. She was also whip fair. And you want to talk about crossing the aisle. Time after issue, after bill, after resolution, after measure, she did. She was fair. She was honest. And God knows she was candid. And those are all good things. And she took on tough issues. And remember, and I am a husband, a father of 4 daughters, a grandfather of 3 granddaughters. We got a female cat in our house. We got an aquarium. All the fish are women, I'm convinced 100%. So I bring that up to tell you that it's my understanding there are more women in the state legislature than men at this point. It's about damn time, okay? And I say that both tongue-in-cheek and honestly because you need to remember something. In 1984, in 1986, and on, it was a different world than it is today. It just was. It didn't matter to her. She didn't wear her gender on her sleeve. She wore her beliefs. She wore her values. She wore and led with her heart and also with her head. And she took on social issues, and you've heard children's issues, and you've heard medical issues that nobody, man, woman, House, Senate, were willing to take on. And let's start with the issue. Let us remember the issue of AIDS. And she de-demonized a medical condition. She took politics out of a medical condition, and she brought humanity into that situation, and she forged a bipartisan solution so we remembered medicine before politics. I will leave you with this. Descriptors. Second mom, mentor, teacher, leader, and she made the best damn chocolate chip cookies that you could ever have in your life. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Thank you all to the former members who came to speak. The Senate will come back to order. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion for the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 001 and request a roll call vote.
The motion is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 1, and there has been a request for a roll call vote. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Senators Baisley, Baisley, aye. Bridges, Bridges, aye. Buckner, Buckner, aye. Coleman, Coleman, aye. Cutter, Cutter, aye. Danielson, excused. Exum, Exum, aye. Fields, Fields, aye. Gardner, Gardner, aye. Janal, Janal, aye. Gonzalez, Gonzalez, aye. Hanson, Hanson, aye. Hinrichsen, Hinrichsen, aye. Jaquez Lewis, Jaquez Lewis, aye. Kirkmeyer, Kirkmeyer, aye. Kolker, Kolker, aye. Liston, Liston, aye. Lundeen, Lundin, I. Marchman. Marchman, I. Moreno. Moreno, I. Mullica. Mullica, I. Pelton, B. Pelton, B, I. Pelton, R. Pelton, R, I. Priola. Priola, I. Rich. Rich, I. Roberts. Roberts, I. Rodriguez. Rodriguez, I. Simpson. Simpson, I. Smallwood. Smallwood, I. Sullivan. Sullivan, I. Van Winkle. Van Winkle, I. Will. Will, I. Winter. Winter, I. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, I. Blickensderfer. Blickensderfer, I. Perlmutter. Perlmutter, I. Feely. Feely, I. Weissman. Weissman, I. Schroeder. Schroeder, I. Keller. Keller, I. Mr. President.
Aye.
President, I.
With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Joint Memorial is adopted. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors of Senate Joint Memorial 1. Members, we will stand in a brief recess to greet our guests. Senate will come back to order. Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's an honor and a joy to be able to be joined by so many leaders from the Asian American and Pacific Islander community this morning. The Senate of the Colorado Legislature, convened in the first general session of the 74th General Assembly, hereby extends heartiest congratulation and commendation in celebration of Lunar New Year. The members of the Colorado State Senate proudly extend our deepest appreciation to Colorado's Asian community and community leaders as we honor and recognize Lunar New Year, which begins this year on Sunday, January 22nd, 2023, and ends on February the 9th of this year. Lunar New Year is the largest holiday of the year for many Asian communities, with celebrations in Colorado and throughout the globe. Its significance is deeply rooted in history and remains the most important cultural celebration for generations of families to gather, reunite, and celebrate. Lunar New Year celebrations offer us the opportunity to honor and to recognize Asian Americans and their leaders for their contributions to both the history and the future of Colorado. Honoring our state's varied cultures, traditions, and religions makes us a stronger and more vibrant state. We invite all Coloradans to learn about this significant celebration and to join in the celebrations for the upcoming Lunar New Year as we usher in the Year of the Rabbit and the Year of the Cat for the Vietnamese community. On request of Senadora Julie Gonzalez, given this 23rd day of January 2023, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado, signed by President Steve Fenberg, President of the Senate. Thank you, colleagues. I do want to lift up and thank all of the community leaders and organizations who are represented here today. So I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize the Far East Center and Mimi Long from that organization, the Asian Chamber of Commerce and Fran Campbell. Mile High United Way is represented by Cindy Ames. The Asian Pacific Development Center is represented today by Harry Budisiddhartha. Asian Girls Ignite is represented by Joanne Liu and Megan Yen. The Colorado Dragon Boat Festival is represented by Evan Hung and Sarah Moore. Colorado Asian Pacific United is represented by Ben Niemthet. The National Association of Asian American Professionals in Colorado is represented by Janie Sayavong. The K Foundation is represented by Miguel Insuk Lavato. The Denver Asian American Pacific Islander Commission is represented by Darren Tang and Catherine McCord. Community Organizing for Radical Empathy is represented by Joy Ha. The Asian Pacific American Bar Association is represented today by Blake Gansberg. The Nathan Yip Foundation is represented by Deborah Yim. Trongang Gifts is represented by Fan Long. And Asian Avenue Magazine is represented today by Christian Ortiz on behalf of Annie Ge. Colleagues, what a strong and a vibrant community that we are so honored to be able to celebrate today here in the Colorado Senate. I want to also acknowledge that Representative Soper left gifts for you all on your desks, and Representative Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez and Representative Soper led a similar tribute in the House this morning. And I would be remiss if I did not also acknowledge that while this is also a time of joyous celebration for so many in our community, that this has also been a holiday that just over the weekend has been tinged by loss and tragedy. Colleagues, you all may be aware that 10 people were injured this weekend, or 10 people were injured and 10 more were killed and lost their lives in Monterey Park, California. And in the time where there is so much tragedy and grief and sorrow, there's also much to celebrate and much to honor and so much more work to do to end violence against Asian American communities in Colorado and across the country. With that, colleagues, I do request a moment of silence and that the Senate chimes be rung.
The Senate will observe a moment of silence and the chimes will ring. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I welcome y'all to come over to Southwest Denver over the course of this Lunar New Year, this coming weekend. There will be so much to celebrate. And I hope that you also take some time to get to know, if you haven't already, the amazing work being led by so many folks in community here in Denver, across the metro area, and throughout the state of Colorado. Thank you all for the work that you all do.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Myself and the good senator from Logan County would like a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. So, senators, all last week and the week before, we heard about how we were to give money for the auction. Well, good job. We did a great job, but I just want to point out before the other good senators speak with regard to this, that the grand champion steer, which led off the night, high bid $200,000, went to Justin Fanabaker, and I know the Fanabaker family very well because they're from Weld County, Colorado. So we're very happy that they received that. And then the other, and that was a record, and it's the first time in a quarter century that an exhibitor, junior livestock exhibitor from Colorado, won the grand champion and then got this record high dollar amount for his steer. And the reserve grand champion hog, name was Little G, shown by 16-year-old Carson Fetzer of Kersey, again, from Weld County, Colorado. So I just thought we could all celebrate that. Thank you all very much. That would be Weld County, Colorado. Thank you.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would like to say thank you to everybody in this room who donated money. We were able to buy 2 animals this year. We bought a hog, and they're both Colorado kids. Cannot remember where the Colorado kid was from in the hog, but I do remember that the steer that we bought, Senator Simpson, who used the magical, the paddle or the number 40 that we had, he was from Cope, Colorado, and we were able to go in with several members like the FFA and some other people to actually buy that for $31,000. So he was very grateful and very excited. And the young man with the hog was very grateful, very excited. And one of the House members, the House member of the chair, the amount that we raised was $23,000 total. So we set a record. We set a record. So, and I made sure to tell former Senator Donovan, our former senator from here, that that we outraised her, and so I made sure to rub it in a little bit. So thank you.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for those of you who didn't donate this year, we have next year. So start gathering up your pennies, your quarters, your dimes. Lift up your sofa cushions. Let's make it bigger next year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the senator from Denver for that important reminder. Great job, colleagues. Not to speak ill of my former colleagues over in the House, but the Senate more than doubled the House donation. So great job. Thank you.
Senator Pelton, back for more.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Dan Files is going to be in the basement doing our Bible study. I invite you all to come down, have some breakfast, and then get filled with the Word and start our day off right. And it starts at 7:15 down in 109, I believe. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to circle back and focus again on the tribute that we just had, acknowledging the significant contribution of the Asian American community. I represent Arapahoe County in Aurora, and we are delighted to be enriched by this community. I see so many of my friends who have businesses and who are serving at a variety of different capacities. It could be healthcare, it could be all kinds of support services, providing access to food. And I didn't want the day to go by without saying to you, welcome. Welcome to the state capitol. And I want to encourage you to come down here often because we pass bills down here and we need your voice. And we need your lens as it relates to the kind of work that we do to help guide us. Because if we don't hear from you, then we don't know if what we're doing is the right approach for all people, for all of Colorado as it relates to access to housing and healthcare and a quality education. We need your voice. We need your active participation, not only in your community, but in this community here in this chamber. So welcome to the state capitol and welcome to the state Senate chambers. And I'm so excited to participate in all the activities that are upcoming. Thank you for being here.
Further announcements. Senator Hawkins-Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, yesterday, January 22nd, 2023, marks what would have been the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, which set the law of the land for personal freedoms for generations of Americans. Last summer, the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. But thanks to the work of many fine senators in this chamber, reproductive and abortion rights are enshrined in Colorado state law after we passed the Reproductive Health Equity Act. As Vice President Harris said recently, can we truly be free if a woman cannot choose what happens to her body? Can anyone truly be free if we don't have the ability to choose what is best for our health and well-being? Every person deserves the right to determine their own future. But now, because of the actions of 6 judges, that right has been taken away, putting millions of lives at risk. I am of the age where I heard my aunts and my older friends whisper and worry with fear of their own lives. And years later, my 3 sisters had the ability to make that decision for themselves. But now, my 3 nieces in other states cannot. Today, I'm thinking of all the Americans in surrounding states to Colorado who no longer have access to safe and legal abortion services. And what science has shown is that maternal deaths increase by 30% for Latinas in abortion-restricted states. And for Black women, it's 36% increase that a woman could die in pregnancy or from complications due to pregnancy. And now, across the United States, more than 60 anti-choice bills have been proposed for this 2023 legislative session, including extreme proposals restricting access to contraception, and felony charges for accessing care. These extreme actions cannot be tolerated. We must protect and not restrict the right to choose.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
I've been a long-time advocate for reproductive rights, and this year it became even more important. Some of you know my story, some of you don't. I won't belabor it. But in June, I passed out at the airport in heart and lung failure. I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension due to an autoimmune disease I didn't know I've had since I was a child. What that means is I have an IV that goes straight to my heart and a pump that many of you have seen. This is what it looks like. Every morning I get up and I mix this because my medicine comes in a powder and it only lasts 72 hours. And I always need my pump with me because I will die if I don't have it. I'm trusted by my healthcare providers to do this every morning. I'm trusted to take my medicine at the right time. I'm trusted to fill my prescriptions. And if I get pregnant, I will die. We've seen, since these restrictive laws have been passed, a 217% increase in those seeking care in Colorado. That means longer waiting times. Waiting times are 10 to 30 days. If I get pregnant, my heart won't last 10 to 30 days. One of the medicines I needed, I actually have to submit a monthly pregnancy test. I'm trusted to get my prescription. I'm trusted to mix my medicine. I'm trusted to take my pump with me. I am not trusted to understand the consequences of my prescription when it comes to my reproductive health care. If I get pregnant, I die. And I'm telling you this, asking for empathy and humanity. And at the same time, not everyone seeking abortion care, because abortion care is health care. And that's what I hope you take from this. Abortion care is health care, but not everyone seeking abortion care should have to tell you a story appealing to your empathy and your humanity. This is health care. We don't expect cancer patients or heart attack patients to come and tell you their story. And yet we are asking thousands of people across the country seeking abortion care, which is health care, to tell you their stories, to get the access they need to health care, because this is about freedom. And so when we have these conversations, I hope you remember my story and also understand there are thousands and thousands of stories that shouldn't have to be told, because we should just offer abortion care as health care. And this country is starting to deny that freedom to me and thousands of others across the country.
Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Since I've been old enough to care or to remember, Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land. My mother wasn't so fortunate, and at least a few of her friends died because of botched back alley abortions. Their young lives were precious and surely deeply mourned by everyone who loved them. Because life is sacred, truly sacred, the decisions around bringing life into this world should also be sacred. Roe versus Wade protected the rights of the individual to make these deeply personal and sacred decisions for themselves. Women have been fighting for our rights. Women have been leading on this issue, and women will eventually prevail for my daughter and for your daughters. Thank you.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish we were here celebrating the 50th. Oh, I'm sorry. May I request a moment of personal privilege?
Granted.
I wish we were here celebrating the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Unfortunately, we are grieving the overturning of this landmark decision. There are now huge swaths of the country where a woman seeking an abortion has nowhere to go unless she can get to a state with abortion protections. I believe in choice. My body, my choice. Your body, your choice. Now imagine that getting an abortion is what can save your life. Think about the realities of women across our country, and especially for Black women and women of color. The CDC estimates that Black women were about 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. And they estimate that nearly 1/3 of all abortions in this country are performed on Black women. That is why we have to keep fighting, to ensure that anyone who needs abortion can get it, to ensure Black women have the same access to life-saving medical care, to preserve the fundamental rights we have already protected here in Colorado. I am proud to have been a part of the team that passed the Reproductive Health Equity Act, and I'm proud to continue the work this year to protect patients and providers and ensure that every Coloradan has access to the health care they need. When I think about when I was growing up, and even to this day, young women who have unfortunately had to make very, very difficult decisions in their lives. And I remember a couple of legislators who said, "Janet, you're a Christian." Yes, I am a Christian, and I believe that whatever a woman does is her decision between her and her family and her God. I believe in decisions being left to the woman and her family. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, it's hard for me to comprehend what happened this past June. I didn't think it was possible that after 5 decades that the Supreme Court would overturn a woman's right to choose her access to what I say would be health care. Couldn't believe it. But I can tell you in this state, we quickly went to action. We codified Roe in our state constitution. But I'm worried about my sisters across the nation who don't have the access to health care, abortion care that we have in the state of Colorado. Many women have to travel outside of our state to get the care that they need. It's expensive. It takes travel time, and it's not fair. It's just not fair. So we're entering into this period where the Supreme Court justice says that it depends on where you live for you to have access to health care. So if you don't live in Colorado, you might not have the same choice like you might see in Texas where they don't have access, or Mississippi or some of the other states. It's uneven practice for women when they can't get the same level of care that we provide in Colorado. It's just not fair. It's just not equal. And so I will continue to fight to make sure that every woman has the access to care that she needs. And it shouldn't be based on a politician's decision to be able to tell a woman and her family what's right for them. These kinds of things are economic decisions. And it's baffling and it's troublesome to me that we have a government that wants to force birth on a woman. Because when that happens, when I think about the economic justice of that, what it takes to raise a child, when you think about child care and health care and food and shelter and all those kinds of things, where will the government be then? So it's not just about my state, Colorado. It's about access for every single woman in the great state, our state, the United States. Thank you.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, you all may notice that many of us are wearing green. And, you know, red is for Lunar New Year, acknowledging that. And green is acknowledging La Marea Verde, the green wave. I had the privilege over the course of this summer to travel with a delegation of women lawmakers from here in Colorado, New Mexico, North Carolina, and Texas, to go and to learn from our neighbors to the south, to learn from Mexico. Because in 2021, Mexico's Supreme Court ruled that criminalizing abortion was unconstitutional. And when I met with Mexican senators and leaders, doctors, and care providers, this was in the weeks before the Dobbs decision was announced. They were stunned. They said, there's no way. We have looked to the United States as being a beacon for so long, for so many years. There's no way. They were incredulous when we were speaking to them about the fact that our Supreme Court was very likely to overturn the bedrock that was Roe v. Wade. It blew their minds. La Marea Verde, the Green Wave movement, has really taken over many countries in Latin America as a symbol for reproductive justice, for feminism, and for gender justice in all its forms. And it's an opportunity for us in this moment to look to our neighbors in the South, to learn from their example as we work here in Colorado and in this chamber and in this body. And I'm honored to stand alongside so many people here in this chamber, in the House, and across this state who are working every day to ensure that every Coloradan is treated with dignity and respect when it comes to their own decisions about their own bodies. And so in that spirit, Mr. President, I want to ensure that all of you join us and have the invitation to join us today at noon at the First Baptist Church, where we will honor and celebrate the work that we have done and the work that remains to do for the Cobalt legislative luncheon today at noon. Your aides and your staff are welcomed to attend. I look forward to seeing you all there today at noon at the First Baptist Church. Thank you.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to my colleagues for leading on this issue. It is appropriate that those whose bodies, that's right. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
From the top. Thank you to my colleagues for leading on this. It is appropriate and right that those whose bodies are directly impacted by the overturning of Roe versus Wade are leading on this issue. But I don't want to leave this chamber with the impression that men aren't impacted by this or that men don't care about this. We are impacted by this. We do care about this. We are here in this fight. I'm grateful to live in a state where, with the leadership of my colleagues, we have protected the right for a woman to access abortion care if she wishes. And thank you very much for your comments today. We are with you.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, an announcement from the Office of Legislative Legal Services. You have a deadline Wednesday of your bills being delivered up to the desk. If you wish to have your bill delivered directly to you, you will need to have that bill finalized by 5 p.m. tomorrow. So if you'd like it delivered to you so that you can shop it around, perhaps get some co-sponsors, please finalize your bill by 5 p.m. tomorrow. And if it is delivered to you, don't forget to turn it into the front desk, Secretary Markwell, no later than 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday. If a bill is delivered to you, or the default is that your bill is delivered to the front desk, it should not be returned to legal services. We don't want any lost bills. We actually have specific rules for that, by the way. We don't want any lost bills happening. So do not return it to legal services. If it needs changes, you will have to make those by amendment after the bill is introduced. I think that is it, Mr. President. So with that, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 1 p.m. today. Oh, I'm sorry, I withdraw that motion, Mr. President.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for the day. I have a delay. I have a logistical announcement. Senate Transportation Energy is meeting today at 1:30. There are 3 bills listed on the calendar, 11, 25, and 12. 12 is going to be taken off the calendar and moved to next Monday.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am so excited that today is the first Education Committee meeting, and we will be meeting at 1:30 in room 352. We're hearing 2 bills, and we're also hearing sunset reviews. Look forward to seeing all of you.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are meeting today in the Senate Judiciary Committee for our inaugural just Senate Judiciary Committee meeting as opposed to our joint. At 1:30 in the Old State Library, 271, and we will be hearing 3 different sunset reviews. Be there on time. Thank you.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President, and colleagues, for what I think is the last announcement. There will be a field trip this afternoon. Never say that the Senate doesn't take field trips. From 4 to 6 p.m., the folks at History Colorado have graciously offered an exclusive experience to view the Sand Creek Massacre exhibit at History Colorado. That is available to all members of the Senate, the staff, aides, legislative aides as well. So if you are interested in joining that, please, by all means, come to History Colorado between 4 and 6 p.m., and we will be that exhibit will be available for us to tour. With that, Mr. President, I do move that the Senate stand in recess until 1 p.m. today. Colleagues, you do not need to return. We're just reading bills across the desk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in recess until 1 p.m. today.